Hey, REIT Ballers, we are back. This is M. Glad.
Spurleasy in the house. How's everyone doing out there?
We are finally wrapping up 2020 with our final episode of the year. So we're grateful to have you on. And today we have a great guest, a champion of the real estate industry, Mr. Herman Bulls of JLL, which is one of the largest firms in the world. So stay tuned for our last episode. Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
Hey everyone, we are back. What's up, Spurlock?
What's going on, man? How's everyone doing out there? As Mark mentioned earlier, it's our last episode of 2020. So I just want to wish everyone out there happy holidays as the year closes up.
Yes, a wild year, but hopefully everyone's healthy and doing well. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you for supporting REIT Ball in this first year. We have a lot of great things going into 2021, so stay tuned. But as I mentioned, today we have a great guest. Followed his career, very impressed with his story, and so grateful to have him on as a guest. Mr. Herman Bulls, who's the Vice Chairman of Americas of JLL and also the International Director. Again, JLL is one of the largest real estate firms in the world. He's also the founder of JLL's highly acclaimed Public Institutions Division, which specializes in delivering comprehensive real estate solutions to federal, state, local governments, nonprofit organizations, and higher education institutions. Mr. Bulls works with the firm's largest public and corporate clients to devise and implement integrated real estate strategies to lower occupancy costs and increase productivity. During his 30 years at JLL, Mr. Bulls worked in areas of development, investment management, asset management, facilities operations, and business development. Prior to joining JLL, Mr. Bulls completed nearly 12 years of active duty service while with the U.S. Army. His last active duty assignments were working in the office of the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Financial Management at the Pentagon and Professor of Economics and Finance at West Point. He also served overseas in Republic of Korea. Mr. Bulls received a degree in engineering from West Point and it followed up by an MBA in finance from Harvard Business School. He also serves on a list of public, private, and not-for-profit boards. I want to stop there because as I was doing the research, I was really impressed by Mr. Bulls. He has such an inspirational story. So I hope that he'll share more of that. But I could just summarize all of this, Spurlock, by saying if you look up the phrase boss moves, you see Mr. Bulls pop up. So definitely. I think it's game time. Let's bring him in.
All right, let's bring him in.
Mr. Bulls, welcome to the show.
Very nice to be here.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us. It is obviously perfect timing because real estate is very interesting. The markets, everything going on in the world, but I think most importantly, there was a pretty big game last weekend, Army versus Navy, that I think you may have watched. So interesting.
Well, in the last, I was calculating the last 44 years, I've only not seen in person 3 of those games.
Wow.
So that was 2 years when I was in Korea. My wife and I were in Korea. And then 1 year when I was in grad school at Harvard, they played the game out in the Rose Bowl. And, it was just kind of tough to get out there. So we're West Point family. You can see the rug behind me as the West Point sill, and 2 of my sons graduated from West Point.
Okay.
And one of them played football, the other played lacrosse. And my wife and I were married at West Point.
Wow.
And she also served as an admissions officer while I was on during my assignment there. And 2 of our kids were born there. So
nice.
And that's probably where they're going to lay me down as well. So,
West Point through and through.
Yeah, we are a West Point family.
Absolutely. Well, I was doing research, leading up to this. Like I said, I followed your career, and I just feel like you're leading the way for the next generation. But in doing additional background and research prior to the show, I just felt like your story needed to be shared with the audience as much as you're comfortable sharing. Starting with growing up in Alabama, transitioning into the military life, and then transitioning to the business world and the industry that we love so much in real estate. So If you could just share a little bit more about your life experience and how that's really molded you into the individual that you are today.
Sure, Mark, happy to. Well, we all are a product of our environments and where we come from. And again, I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My mom, Lucy Bell Bulls, a great woman. And one of the interesting things is that I never met my father. And the reason I never met my father is because when my mom was 5 months pregnant with me, my father was killed in a farm accident. So we were, he was industrious enough to buy some land, which is still in the family today, and my dad, and he was a custodial worker at the Tennessee Valley Authority. And my mom basically would, a housewife per se, but, side gigs, started a long time ago in our communities, as you know. So she was also a domestic and a cook, clean the white people's houses and cooked at a restaurant, et cetera, et cetera. So when you can imagine when my father was killed in this accident, she's pregnant with me and 6 other kids. And this is a pretty dire situation. And in the South, I know both of you have some connections in the South. It's all about family. It's all about coming together. And people would say, hey, Lucibel, I'll take one, I'll take the other. And she said, as I understand it, no, I'm keeping my family together. And long story short, she continued doing the things she did. I mean, she had kids anywhere from unborn to 12 at that point. Wow. And the end result of this was that there are 11 degrees in the family amongst those kids. Awesome. All but one finished college. My mother had not finished high school at the time. She went back, got her GED, then went to the junior college, became a licensed practical nurse. And we basically, as they say, moved into what was considered a middle-class life that I had during the junior high school. We moved from the farm in Center Star, Alabama, which many of your listeners will not know, to the thriving metropolis of Florence, Alabama. Mm-hmm. And, that's where I transitioned and went to high school there. And you can imagine during this time, I still have memories of much of the civil rights movement, i.e. driving down Florence Boulevard, being stopped, not in a harassment way, but as if it was no big deal with the KKK in their robes, wow. Standing there, kind of like the firemen with their boots, taking donations. Mm-hmm. And they would stop every car, even cars with Black people in them. Wow. I recall specifically going to the movie theater and having to go through the side door up to the balcony because Blacks were not allowed on the first floor. I remember being at the bus station or at the department store, Rogers department store, and you'd see a sign that said for water fountains, whites only. Mm-hmm. The bus station, Negroes over here. Wow. And I vividly remember going out to eat and having to go to the back of the restaurant to get the food to come back to the car. So those are experiences that I certainly share these things with my sons. But it's kind of foreign to them. But much of the things that have happened during, this year right. has brought back many of those memories. But, I think character was built in terms of inheriting that work ethic from my mother. And then kind of being in the environment I was in the South. The high school were just being integrated at this time. And my high school was about 15% Black. And I ended up with a phenomenal high school career, and some of the things we'll talk about, I think that was important even for what I do today in terms of being successful, because it's about relationships. And mm-hmm. in that school, I was the first, African-American or Black quarterback to start full-time at the school, president of student council, Boys State, class favorite, National Honor Society. So all of those things where you sometimes think about a salmon going up the stream and which one makes it all the way to the top. Yeah. But I think you can influence that through, we all need that surrounding, I tell my kids and I tell people when I do speeches, if you want to get fleas, you hang with the dogs. If you want to soar, you hang with the eagles. So the people you hang out with, the things that you see, that's what gives you that inspiration to go forward.
That's awesome.
Definitely.
That's awesome. I guess that's why I hang out with you, Spurlock. I'm just
That's why I hang out with you. Well, definitely appreciate that response. Mr. Bulls, what keeps you up at night from an industry or business perspective? In your opinion, what are the biggest hurdles the industry still needs to solve for, either from an investment, user experience, or human capital standpoint?
Yeah, well, right now, obviously, issues related to COVID are paramount in anybody in real estate, right? So if you're in office real estate, the issue is, are people going to need office space? And we'll talk about that a little more. And I think long term, the answer is yes. If you're in multifamily real estate, I know you're anxiously awaiting the results of Congress today to see what stimulus activity is going to come out, because if people don't have jobs, they can't pay their rent. That's an issue. One of the areas, two of the areas that are pretty hot right now would be industrial, obviously, with the logistics, with we're getting everything delivered to us, and we've got to get that last mile. We've got to store it and transport it somewhere. And also things related to medical real estate, doing quite well now. So, but overall, until we get the vaccine and get things back, things are going to go. And yes, one of the things that as you get older, and I'm sort of at that point, I don't know if I've self-actualized yet, but I'm pretty darn close to it. And when you get there, you really do start thinking about the legacy and what are the things that are supposed to happen. And if you think of it right now, I mean, I've just been blessed. I've been fortunate. Part of it I worked for, part of it was luck. Majority of it was work. Okay. But you still got to get lucky every once in a while. And as I looked out in terms of wealth creation, I mean, I've actually done very, very well during this horrible year. Okay. And what that does, however, it brings out the disparities of those who have and those who don't have. Okay. I think many know that the average salary or income for Black is 60% of whites. Okay. On average. Okay. Now, the more disturbing part of that is the average net worth of a Black is 10% of whites. Now, think about that disparity and what has happened during this time. Those who have assets, okay, and in this point, you look at the stock market. Stock market's at an all-time high when the country is just facing the biggest dilemma that we've ever been in. Right. But there's a large swath of individuals who are not taking part in that. And as a result of that, the divide is actually becoming greater. And these are the things that cause the problems that we had back in the 60s when people feel that they're in a corner and there's no way out. You resort to survival tactics.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I always wondered, like, at one point, investing in the stock market, and I think I mentioned this on a prior episode, investing in the stock market was a way for folks to have an affordable way to get involved and invest. And now even shares are getting more and more expensive. Does it get to a point where folks can't even afford to buy shares of stock that they typically
will? Well, you mentioned earlier that I was a professor at West Point, and personal finance was one of the areas that I kind of really got into. And your listeners out there that are trying to get this done, they're kind of two basic concepts that I would suggest people look at. And the first is dollar cost averaging, of course. And what that means is that you invest a certain amount every month, no matter what the market does. And remember, you are investing, you're not gambling. Okay. So you're taking a long-term perspective toward this. Exactly. So when the market is high, you're going to buy less. When the market is low, you're going to buy more. And over a time period, okay, no matter what time period you look at it, equities over the long term are going to perform. Now, what the long term is up for definition. Right. However, if I'm, 25, 30 years old, just starting out, I wouldn't be too concerned about it because it's going to go up and it's going to go down. That's number one. And then the second thing is understanding asset allocation is one of the most important decisions you can make in terms of putting a portfolio together. Okay. And I know one of the things that you're doing is you're telling people, finding out a way for them to invest in REITs. And we know that's a way that you can get professional management in an asset class that you think could do well in the future. Look, there have been more fortunes made and lost in real estate than probably any other industry. And guess what? It's going to continue to be that way 100 years from now. because we're always going to need some form of real estate, and there it's going to be there. That's it. And then one of the things that I've done, and I've taught my sons and my students, is sometimes you just buy the market, okay? Whether it's a low cost ETF fund from, you know, Vanguard or Fidelity, whomever, and just buy the market and sit back and certainly monitor it, but don't fuss over it. Decide what portion. And since we're talking about personal finance, and this is something I did when I was a second lieutenant in the Army, wasn't making a lot of money, but every pay raise I got, your first 4 or 5 years, you get, you know, every year you get a pay raise. When you get promoted, you get a pay raise. They're not big numbers, but they're still numbers, okay? There's an adage in personal finance which everyone needs to follow, and that is pay yourself first.
Definitely.
Part of everything you earn is yours to keep. And when you get that discipline process started, and then when you get that pay raise, you get that promotion, take a proportion, and my wife and I did it 50%, would go to enhance our long-term investments, and then 50% would go to an increase in quality of life. And I'm afraid what happens with a lot of people, 110% of the raise goes to increase in quality of life.
Yeah.
So we've got to balance those. You need to reward yourself, but we have to take a long-term view.
Definitely.
Well, folks, that pretty much wraps up everything we're trying to capture in REIT Ball. So I think we can end the show right there. No, that was so much in this first segment of the show that I really hope people will listen to a couple times and capture, take notes. I mean, free education just now. I mean, that's so powerful, and hopefully people are disciplined and they do take that advice. So thank you for that.
What career advice would you give the next generation of real estate professionals? And are there any unique opportunities within the industry where talent can stand out from the pack and show their personal brand and thrive?
Well, first of all, whether you're in real estate or you're in medicine, law, or whatever, the first thing I want to tell you is you want to pursue excellence every day, okay? And you'll see me, if you follow me on social media, you'll see me when I see a Black person does something, I hashtag Black excellence, okay? Because that's what we want to think about. Everything we do, when you're starting out that career, you're writing that memo and you got to get off to do something, take the time to read that memo again, because first impressions are lasting, okay? The second thing is be a lifelong learner, okay? I woke up this morning probably about 6:05 or something, and the first hour and 20 minutes of my morning was spent reading. And that occurs every day, because I told my students, I'm your professor, but my job is not to teach you. My job is to teach you how to learn. Because all the things that you've learned, think of what you learned in college, okay? The actual idea of what you learn is probably not that important. However, the process of your learning and staying up to date is what is important. So you've got to do that. The next thing I would say is you've got to take risks, okay? You got to take risks, but you don't jump out of an airplane, and I'm airborne qualified, without a parachute.
Calculated
risk. You got to have the appropriate mitigating factors to take calculated risks. So if you go right, you know, one of the things I did, you know, was with JLL, and I had this idea. I wanted to start a company, and I went out and started a company with SunTrust and Goldman Sachs as successive partners. Matter of fact, in the multifamily space, as one of the Fannie Mae DUS lenders. And, you know, that was a risk. Here I am, managing director, leading this new group at JLL, and you're going to go do something else? Well, that was a calculated risk, okay? And what it did, it provided me with the opportunities I have today, which lets me decide every day, for the most part, what I'm going to do when I get up in the morning, because that gives me optionality. So you want to be able to take those calculated risks. And I think the other thing you want to do is you want to connect with people. And let me explain that very quickly. Networking is a concept that we all think about and talk about. And networking is phenomenal, and you need to do it. Networking is transactional. I want to know Spurlock because Spurlock can do something for me. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. However, remember I told you about my high school where it was 16% Black, and if I'd only gotten the Black vote, I don't think I would have been the student council president.
Right.
I connected. Connecting is when you do something for someone without regard as to what you're going to receive in return. And if you start, I wish I didn't have this framework at the time, but I had that process as I were doing. And if you do that year after year after year, y'all got a buddy, only time you hear from them is what? When they want something. They need something, okay? So that connecting. I remember early in my career to this day, I see an article. I've got a client that son plays soccer. Tear that article out. I've got these little cards with my branding on it. We'll talk about branding in a second. And I send a note. Hey, Joe, thought you'd like this. Hope your son has a great season. Now think about that from a marketing perspective. Said nothing about business. I showed that I cared and I connected. And I gave him or her something that will sit on their desk for a couple of days. And I did what? I differentiated myself. And all of a sudden, I have a connection which has a strong foundation. And as a result of that, what I do as vice chairman, I mean, I'm a rainmaker. That's what I do for a living. Over half of the deals I do now result from what? Somebody calling me as a result of something that happened maybe 20 years ago, maybe 20 days ago. But when you consistently apply that, not being a sponge to always take everything away, but being a giver. And as a result of that, you have a connection. And with that, you have a strong relationship. You'll have great results.
Absolutely. Planting the seeds without expectations, serving, being passionate about certain, naturally, excuse me, as humans, we're meant to serve, right? And if we're serving with a purpose, to your point, without expecting anything in return, sometimes things work out that we weren't expecting, and it works out in our favor to where it's beneficial for us too. But if we lead by trying to serve, give back, it all works out in the end. You feel good. Worst case scenario, you feel good about it.
Right.
That's right. And Mark, also for those in the real estate or in any profession, make sure you take those stretch assignments. Okay. When somebody needs something done and say, oh my gosh, we got to run that report for whatever. And you go, oh my gosh, I hope they don't ask me. Are you kidding me? You want them to ask you and you want to do it because that's the way, again, that you learn every day.
Yeah, no, I think Spurlock and I think I can say that helped in my career along the way, trying to roll up your sleeves and just do the dirty work that no one wants to do. Definitely. And the second piece is being willing to relocate to areas that no one else will go. Depending wherever the opportunity is, no matter the country, city, assignment, if it needs to get done, being willing to raise your hand, say you'll do it. To your point, I mean, that's how you get recognized and that's how you stand out.
I agree.
So let's shift over to a little bit of real estate. We talked professional development, so thank you for that. So capital markets and the space markets, love to hear your insights there and how you feel the pandemic has shifted, if at all, has shifted real estate as a whole. So just thinking about investor appetite and global fund flow, do you think that there's been any permanent shifts geographically or asset class, or do you think investor appetite will normalize and settle back to pre-COVID capital allocations?
I'm going to say the most important thing for investors that your audience has ever heard right now.
Let's do it.
Notice that pause. Because when I'm talking in person, I know how to do it. You get them on the edge of their seats. Okay? And it is buy straw hats in the wintertime. Buy straw hats in the wintertime. And what does that mean? That means that when things are most out of favor, particularly when you're in something called a cyclical industry like real estate, that is the time to act. So you guys may or may not remember the Resolution Trust Corporation, RTC, when just the real estate market just went to hell. There are so many billionaires that were made as a result of that because everybody was doing what? Running to the hills. Okay. So this is something that I think there definitely will be some systematic shifts, I think, in markets. But overall, as long as we have people, there is going to be a need for them to have a place to live, work, and play.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in essence, is what real estate is. And how that happens within that framework from time to time is impacted by external events, such as a big depression, such as a natural disaster, such as a pandemic, which we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
And after each of those things that have happened for the last 1,000 years, real estate has come back.
Sure.
So think about that. And somebody's going to be listening to this 10 years from now saying, my gosh, that guy was smart. No, I'm not smart. I'm just I can look at the charts and look at what's going to find out. We're going to solve the COVID issue. It's going to get solved. You know, we had polio, you know, cancer, obviously, we've gotten better at that, and other things. So we're going to we put a man and a woman on the moon, we're going to find a cure for COVID. Okay. And as a result of that, in the meantime, there are going to be cyclical changes. For example, right now, you guys, in terms of looking at multifamily, guess what? Suburban multifamily is doing better than urban multifamily, right? Because the fright of people being in confined spaces, so they want to get out. I have an opinion, however, that the gateway cities, New York will never, ever be a place where everybody's going to abandon it. It's just not going to happen. San Francisco, okay? These gateway cities, I think, are going to continue and they will come back. Now, there will be a change in real estate. Let's talk about office for a second. On the one hand, people are working from home, and even the corporate boards I'm on, USAA, you know, within a week, we had almost 30,000 people working from home, okay? And we didn't know it was coming, but that's where you got to have agility and flexibility and be ready to go, okay? That's a sign of a good management team. So now we say, okay, some firms are saying, okay, we're going to work from home forever. Now, I've got some concerns about working from home, particularly as it relates to underrepresented people. That would be women and minorities. Mm-hmm. And we gain a lot, as we talked about connecting earlier, from being around that water cooler, the coffee pot, being in the cafeteria, running into people where that innovation and creativity occurs. And if we're only able to do that through electronic means, I think those two groups are going to be negatively impacted in the long term. Okay. And that's something you've got to be aware of, and they've got to find a way to say, how do I make up for that? Then the next issue is some people are going to come into the office, and people are going to need office space. But for some foreseeable time, we are going to practice social distancing. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to be able to pack as many people into the space as you did before. So therefore, the amount of space per person is going to increase. Now, that may not take up for all of it, but that's going to take some of the demand equation. And you're going to actually end up with basically here over the next 18 to 24 months, you're going to end up with actually 3 years. You're going to end up with 3 types of workers. You're going to have those workers that have to go to work, right? So in your building right now, there's got to be an engineer, and they got to go down and check the boiler and make sure it's okay, right? So they've got to go to work to do what they do. Our medical people, they are going to have to go to work to make sure that we can provide services. Then you've got those people who are call center employees on the other extreme that we just bought a Peloton bike, and I spoke to 2 people in the process of buying it and setting it up. And both of them I talked to from their living room. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they were sitting there with the technology, do everything they do. So there's that extreme where, no, those people don't need to come and draw in anyway. It's good for the environment, right? CO2 is down. The roads are less congested. So there's a win there. And then you're going to have that hybrid in the middle. And the hybrid in the middle, and most surveys say people want the flexibility to work from home when they can, and also to go in. Look, we love our families, but all the surveys I'm seeing, but people are ready to get out of the house. Right. They want to get out of the house. Right. And everybody, it looks like the norm is, I'd like to spend 2 to 3 days in the office, and I'd like to spend 2 to 3 days working at home for that. So having said that, I don't know exactly what the percentages is going to be for each of those, But I think that's what we're going to have for the next 3 years or so until we get to what is a new normalcy. Are there going to be some structural changes that people see, that some things you can get done without congregating in an office? Of course. Is technology going to fill in for some of it? Of course. But in the end, we're all humans. Humans like interaction with other humans.
No, I think you bring up a few good points where I think Green Street Advisors was early on in the pandemic, and this may have changed, but they were expecting potentially like a 20% shift from folks who go in full-time to folks who go in either part-time or work virtually. I don't know if that number is still true, or, it's obviously a projection based on data points that they have. So it could, shift the demand, but to your point, some of that is absorbed by having more space per person. If you look at co-working for a while, weren't we reducing the square footage per person to try to cram as many people in there to make the model work, correct?
Exactly right.
So now it's kind of going back to,
you got to go back, right?
Yeah, right. So maybe it offsets it, and we don't see much of that. And it's great to hear that was part of my question: is New York and San Francisco and these other markets, will their office valuations be impacted with corporations and employees, folks migrating to other more?
In the short term, yes. In the short term, yes. Okay. But what did I say? The most important investment rule of all is
yourself.
What is long term, and
right. And what? When do you buy straw hats?
In the winter. In the winter. So people will buy, and then they'll wait it out, and then people will forget about the pandemic, come back to New York and San Francisco, and it'll thrive again. Got it. So, keeping track of time, let's transition into industry themes. If you want to start that off, Spurlock.
Definitely. As the real estate industry evolves, we continue to hear more about themes like PropTech, space optionality, the access economy, and sustainability. Which themes, if any, do you believe are here to stay and will have the greatest impact to asset markets and user experience?
Well, I think really all of them to some extent. Certainly sustainability, right? We've got to, I think you saw in the news the last couple of days, this teenage girl, in essence, they said her reason for her death was, the environment. Okay. And that's kind of extreme. That's certainly a wake-up call. You sit there and see a teenager and she had a lung issue, et cetera, et cetera. So the sustainability and the big issue in the corporate world is ESG, environmental, social, and governance. And the environmental part of that is certainly the sustainability issues that we're talking about. The social, of course, makes the fairness and racism that we're talking about. And the governance is how do we make decisions to make sure that our corporations and companies are responsive to the needs of the stakeholders. And notice most people say shareholders. The stakeholders includes the shareholders, the employees, the suppliers, and the communities in which we operate. So those are things that need to be looked at. So sustainability, I think for the reasons, if you look at what's happening, some people will say global warming is not an issue. And, I kind of look at science. Okay. The science says that it is. So that's one. The other is you come down to PropTech, for example. We have a group, and we're putting well over $100 million a year at JLL into technology in real estate. Okay. And what we're doing, it's called Spark, JLL Spark, is we have access to a lot of data when you manage billions of square feet of real estate around the world and the transactions that we do. So we actually have a business plan where we, in essence, are a venture capital firm into PropTech type companies that maybe need data and other experiences to try it. And we're doing the following. We certainly are looking to get an investment return, okay? But at the same time, we're looking to provide those additional services to our clients that will differentiate us in the market. And we do that by investing in new ideas. So I think that's going to continue. Remember, one of my other favorite quotes is from that renowned individual who just really turned the hockey world on its side, saying that you have to skate to where the puck is going to be. That's Wayne Gretzky. And I know Spurlock, you know that one. Mm-hmm. So the same thing here. You don't wait and say, I'm going to go over there and there changes. You have to change as you see the environment around you change. And I think the prop tech, the fintech, all those things are going to be important. If you think about it, if a young company trying to get in the facilities business today, there are barriers to entry because right now, everything is technology. Your customers are going to tell you what's wrong, not by calling on a phone and filling out some form. They're going to get on their personal device or their computer and say, lights out in 23 and it's cold here. And then the person that gets that is not going to get it and then write it on a form and send the ticket to Joe. And then Joe's going to come get it and come sit. All of that's done electronically. And then what's important is the fact that we have each of those individual data points of how many calls we got, what time of the day, what it was for, gives us the opportunity to do what? Predictive and preventive maintenance better to make sure we don't get the call in the first place.
Right.
That's the data analysis, and technology is making all of that happen.
Yeah. I did promise Spurlock that the next time prop tech came up, I wouldn't try to get the buy-in for multifamily on Mars. So I can't get anyone to buy into that concept. So I'll just let the experts do it. And but it is important, and I love the evolution. It seems like real estate was one of the later industries or last industries to really adopt technology. But it's great to see this surge now, as it's going to impact obviously NOI, but then also the user experience as well. I do want to wrap up with the last real estate question. Very quickly, your thoughts, as obviously there's been volatility during the pandemic, but single-family home rentals and purchases have thrived. So do you think that demand shift in residential is going to impact multifamily at all, specifically Class A? And if so, does that mean operators need to start running leaner models with less amenities, less services and things like that, so they can try to absorb some of the declines in occupancy and rental rates?
Yeah, well, again, I think some of these trends are going to end up being cyclical, right? Because what you have is, we talked earlier about living within your means. And the good thing from the tenant's perspective about multifamily is that generally you're not entering a 10-year lease, right? Generally, it's a 12, it could even be 6 months. And obviously a hotel, we're changing the pricing every day. And with that, the prices are going to change. And I was reading some investor reports from a couple of multifamily REITs the other day, and there's no doubt that the pricing is going down. But guess what? The pricing is going down more, as we said earlier, in the urban markets than it is the suburban markets right now. And again, over time, I think that's going to reverse back. However, the issue will be that companies that are agile will respond to the demands of the market. And as you think about hotels, that everybody thought you had to have a restaurant and a workout facility and whatever in it. And then you got the single service hotels come around and say, we're going to give you a bed and a commode and a shower. And anything else you want, you get on yourself. So we have the opportunity with the market segmented to get what we want. And I am certain, Mark, what will happen is that, companies are going to, operators are going to, respond to the market.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. So now I know the real reason why you joined the show and accepted the invite was for the sports segment. So we're going to have Spurlock take it over and wrap up the show for us.
Definitely. Let's hop on into it. So, Mr. Bulls, I know you're an Army guy. First, congratulations on the Army's victory this past weekend. I believe it was 15-0, the first time since 1969 that Navy did not put points on the board. So I'm sure you guys are very happy. I guess my question is, for 364 days out of the year, Army and Navy are on the same team. But for one day, they meet on the football field to decide who has the better football team. What is the campus life leading up to that game for that week?
Borderline crazy. Okay. So, and let me give you a couple of examples. And I sort of heard this more. I told you two of my sons went there as well. But for example, we have exchange cadets. You guys have probably seen on TV sometime at the beginning of the game, the cadets who spent a semester at West Point and Annapolis. You know, we call it the exchange of prisoners, so to speak. But generally speaking, you know, the cadets that are at Naval Academy and the Naval Academy midshipmen there at West Point, something's going to happen to their room in a just way. We also have exchange officers. So I know one of the things that generally happens, rain, sleet, or snow, that you take that officer's office, they'll somehow get the office and they'll take their office out. And if you've seen these beautiful pictures of West Point, they'll take their entire office and move everything out on a plane. Rain, sleet, or snow. I mean, it's just fun. I know when I was there, we had a tactical officer that was from Navy, and we did tell his wife, but she didn't know. But we took his car, hijacked it, brought it into the central area, and basically gave people sledgehammers to kind of do it up. Now, we took a donation and we gave him, you know, money to buy a new car. But I mean, that was just the whole issue. There was a big bonfire the night before the team goes off to Philadelphia. And, you know, the coach is there, the superintendent is there, and, you know, the rabble rousers or cheerleaders, as you call them. And it's just horrific. And if you go around Navy, you go around West Point, on every building, you know, and every time we sing the alma mater, after every game, we stand and sing the alma mater. Right after we sing the alma mater, what do you hear? Beat Navy. No matter what.
No matter what, no matter when.
No matter when. It's always beat Navy. And you see all over West Point, everything you see on the roofs of buildings is a beat Navy. So it's just a phenomenal event. And I saw last night information that we call it America's Game. It had the highest rating of all the games that were on last Saturday, even the LSU Florida game. By about 800,000, 3.9, I think it was either 6. I don't know the number, but anyway, it was the highest. And we normally love the last 10 years or so. We've been the only game on during that Saturday. And the ratings are just out of this world. And I got to tell you, that game is important to us financially as well, because we get half of our athletic budget as a result of that game.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's arguably the greatest rivalry in sports history.
I went to grad school at NYU, and I can't no teams to really brag about. So
yeah, I'm the same. I went to UC Santa Barbara, and we didn't have a football team. So look
at the beaches and the nice weather you had there.
For sure. I love that, and I had USC right down the freeway, so we were still able to root for somebody.
So let's wrap it up with one last sports question. Get Mr. Bulls out of here and off of the hot seat.
So as I think we mentioned earlier, that you played quarterback in high school. Playing quarterback in the 70s, what quarterback did you mold your game after?
Well, you know, I obviously, being in Alabama, you know, Joe Willie, number 12, and that's the number I had in high school.
Okay.
Joe Willie Namath was certainly there. And you have to understand, and you gentlemen may or may not know, there's an individual by the name of Condrich Holloway. And Condrich Holloway was the first Black quarterback in the SEC. And I actually played against Condrich. I was a sophomore when he was a senior. He went to Tennessee, where he set many records. He got the letter from Alabama, but it was the real letter. It wasn't the real letter. But Bear Bryant told him he wanted to recruit him and he was going to make him a defensive back, you know, because he's just a phenomenal athlete. But he said nope. So he went to and I was down up and close and saw this gentleman. I'll never forget. We had him hemmed up, and he was about at the 5, maybe 5.5 yard line, and just went airborne over the defender into the just phenomenal. So Condrich Holloway, those of you who don't know him, do a little research. The first Black quarterback in the SEC. And by the way, just so you know, where I could have gone in the SEC, where they cobbled together a deal for me, was Vanderbilt, the Harvard of the SEC.
Yeah.
And I said, opposed to doing all of this, let me just go to West Point.
West Point.
Get it over with.
Great school.
Yeah.
Well, you chose well and you did well, and we're again honored to have you on today as our guest to share, as we wrap up the year. And I hope you have a phenomenal holiday with your family. I hear West Point folks don't sweat when on the hot seat, but either way, you're officially off. You've done a great job at REIT Ball as one of our guests to wrap up 2020, and we appreciate your time.
Well, look, I want to, number one, congratulate you young men for what you're doing, because I'm going to tell you, we as a country, and more importantly, we as a race, we've got to make sure we're getting people into those high value add industries so that we can continue to build wealth, so we can create a better future, not only for ourselves and our family, but for this great nation we live in.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Well, happy holidays to you.
Yeah.
Same to
Thank
you.
Mr. Bulls.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Take care. So
We're back, Mark.
yep, we are back. So thank you all. I hope there was so much education on that episode.
Definitely. So many jewels.
Yeah, so the good thing is for all of you, again, this was the last episode of 2020. But what we're going to do over the holidays is we're going to now recap everything that we've heard over 2020 with the various guests. So we had an opportunity, if you remember, the CEO of Equinix to kick it off and talk about data centers. We had the People's Corporation talking about private real estate development. We've now had Mr. Bulls talk about his perspective from JLL Global Corporation. We've had data science. We've had former #2 economist and data scientist at CBRE stop in and talk about the economy, talk about machine learning in the future of real estate. We talked about prop tech with the prop tech guests, capital markets with Avis and Young. We've been very, very fortunate, Spurlock, on our first year.
It's been a good 2020 for sure.
Yes. So considering everything, I'm grateful and to have you on as well and help along the way and really take my boring stuff and offset it with some entertainment sports components. So we will take all of the lessons that we learned. We're going to break up the videos. So we'll have segments of each interview on YouTube. So you can check out, 5 to 10 minutes, which you're most interested in each interview. And then from there, we're going to have a piece where we really talk about the lessons learned. So a lot of the jewels that were talked about today with Mr. Bulls, we're going to focus on that a little bit more. What did he really mean and the different concepts that he was referring to, and how can you apply that to REITs going into the new year? So stay tuned for a lot of the education and more stuff that we're going to do in 2021. Did you want to wrap up with anything, Sprott?
Thank you, everyone who's been listening over the year. Continue to like, follow, share, subscribe, get the algorithm going so the folks that need to see this information can see it. And as we started this episode off, just wanted to say happy holidays to everyone out there again, and looking forward to speaking with you in 2021.
Awesome. Be blessed, be well, take care. Talk to you all soon.